Hello, everybody. This is Charlene Burke with Grow Because You Know, www.growbecauseyouknow.com. Welcome to Morning Mindset Cafe, where we are gathering to discuss Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Today, we're discussing the mystery of sex transmutation, something that often makes people uncomfortable because they haven't read the book. It's that simple. According to Napoleon Hill, sex transmutation simply means we are transferring our natural sexual energy from actual sexual expression into expressions of a different sort. Those that we express them or turn them into are along the lines of increased imagination, courage, keenness of thought. Yes, it is that simple, though it isn't necessarily easy to do, because I believe that what we're talking about here is self-control and discipline and how to focus our attention. Just focus our attention. Now, Napoleon Hill wrote all of this, particularly in this chapter of Think and Grow Rich, with men in mind. And every gentleman that I've spoken to who has read the chapter says, yep, he's got us nailed. And those young men being in their 20s and 30s, who are able to create successful businesses, who are creators, inventors, innovators, are able to harness that energy that they have, which is extreme. We all know in young men how the sexual energy comes about and how it can be uncontrollable and how it can be controlled. And so, according to the book and those I've spoken with, they have been able to harness that energy and simply focus it on something else, and to raise their level of awareness beyond the physical into the mental, into the imagination, into creating something, and yes, Brian, into being highly focused. Now I'm going to share something with you. That's not how we women work. We don't have the same type of frenetic energy that the young men have. We simply don't. And I've tried to articulate it with absolutely nothing to go on except my own experience. All right. And that's not the best way to articulate it. I'm just telling you, it's not. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you how it's written by Sharon Lechter, who is the only approved author of Think and Grow Rich for women. All right. And so basically, for women, the challenge in love, romance, and sexual passion is lack of fulfillment or expression. And what it does is it actually drains us, because we mentally focus on that which we don't have, rather than just quite simply, young men focus on, I don't have it, but I'm going to get it. Right? Instead, women draw back and we focus on, well, we don't have this. Why don't we have this? All right. So I'm going to throw this out to you to just consider and think about. Men, you ever come across a woman, be it your sister, cousin, aunt, a good friend, old girlfriend, who bemoans her fate? Why didn't he call me? He said he would call. Why isn't he answering the text? Why isn't he coming by? Why didn't he come when he said he would? Why didn't he pick me up when he said he would? Why is he late? Why is he not loving me? No matter what I do, he doesn't love me. All right, so that is how a woman will drain her energy. You see the difference? A man will turn it right around and say, I'm going to go after her. A woman will say, why? And you know, and gentlemen, I know that those watching the replay as well, I know to be true that many women will ask you, why don't you love me? And you can't answer that. But she's asking. And that's what's happening, is that this sex energy is being expressed in her internally. And that drains the energy. And what happens to us is that's when we become muzzy headed. We lose our mental focus. We lose the ability to be clear, to gain clarity, right? Because all of our attention is on why isn't he? Okay. So having said that, with women, one of the things that we are learning about we women is how to view ourselves, how to support ourselves, and understand that that's where we're coming from. So you fellas, those who've been willing to talk to me, have been telling me that you guys get together, right? And you're able to release that energy through physical activity, through team sports, through, especially as you are becoming men, right? And all that frenetic energy. When it's not fulfilled in the physical expression, it's fulfilled elsewhere, and you're able to focus it. So what we women have to learn how to do is to look at how can we use our own energy to a better purpose. And we have to think about it. I have to tell you that. We have to think about it. And what we think is almost, and I told you in the beginning that I've tried to articulate this from my own point of view, and it's wrong. So what I have learned is that I can express that, I can gain personal magnetism, and I can express that energy in things such as, which is tangible and noticeable, the handshake. You ever shook hands with somebody? And this one made sense to me. I shook hands with somebody and I said, wow, you have power, or you have authority. I've also shaken hands with somebody who is a clammy, wet fish. And I'm like, I'm not impressed. I know. I had to think about that. It's like, yeah, the handshake. I get it. I'm starting to get it. You know, the tone of voice, that confident, authoritative, powerful, grab your attention voice for men. And for women, it is the modulated, the being focused, the attention to detail in the voice, the expressing it gently. See, it's almost like, did we ever talk about opposites attract, male, female? You know. And understanding that makes a huge difference. All right, so Matt's saying attention on the lack, or seeing love as needing the person there, or attaching it to action. No. It is not simply just the attention. It really is it is an energy that takes just as much self-control and self-discipline for a woman to not be drawn into that draining thinking as it does for a man to not feel overwhelmed with the thought of he has to get her, being a part of the chase, the hunter, right? There's a lot of energy there, and on both sides. It's just really, truly opposite sides of the spectrum. So that's why I'm saying it's not just attention on the lack. It is more than that. And we have to recognize that it's more than that. I have to recognize that. And I did. I just couldn't articulate it this way. I'm loving this book. All right. For every woman out there, Think and Grow Rich for Women. So another way is the posture and carriage of the body. Okay? Highly sexed people move briskly with grace and ease. Do you ever think of that? In today's world, do we ever view somebody who is just simply standing proud and tall, moving forward with purpose in brisk manner, but with grace and ease? I want you to think about a woman that you've seen who has done that and walked that way. How attractive is she? That attractiveness is what we're talking about. She is utilizing her sexual energy, and it's expressing itself in the way she's carrying herself. It's not conscious, just like with many of you fellas, it's not conscious. It's not, the conscious thought of whatever, I can speak for women. I'm not thinking to myself, I'm going to wash briskly someplace because I don't want to focus on why doesn't he love me? Of course not. It is simply recognizing that there is that language, if you will, that energy that we have inside of us. It's recognizing it. There's vibrations of thought. So highly sexed people mix the emotion of sex with their thoughts, or may do so at will, and in that way may influence those around them. Alrighty, so who here has been around male or female, depending on your experience and what's coming to mind, that you were drawn to? They're attractive. They're attractive in their demeanor. They have that personal magnetism. They have that energy of power. And you're drawn in as they're talking to you. Some have perfected that skill to such a point that it is a pleasure to be around them, right? Right? All right. And then we have what's called body adornment. I didn't put that up here. Exactly. Drawn in because of the vibration of thought. Again, it's just an energy. We just simply have to recognize that it is an emotional energy and it is instinctual. And that combination is very powerful. We know that to be true. It's powerful. How can we make use of that? How can we make use of that to be better leaders, to be a better person, to put it to use in our creativity, put it to use in being able to focus our imagination? So these are just some things I wanted to point out as a way to reframe some of the thoughts that I've been having, wondering, how do I articulate this? This is difficult for me. Again, we all have our personal experiences and what we're drawing on, right? I don't have any education in this area. So I've noticed that with certain people, because once they leave my presence, I feel the lack of the vibration. Yes. It was interesting. I'm so grateful for men who are able and willing to acknowledge some things. So I posed a question to a very small room of men and simply said, have you ever noticed that you act differently when you're in the presence of a particularly attractive woman? And one of them said, you're right. He's actually the one that confirmed, the last one that confirmed. Every man who's ever read Think and Grow Rich says yes. It's spot on. But he confirmed. He says, you know what? There's no doubt when I am in a blab or a meeting or a business networking meeting and she's attractive, she has my attention. I'm listening to her and I'm listening to what she says. And when she leaves, it's like, oh, I kind of slouch and it's not that big a deal. See, it's not like we're consciously thinking this, but once we're aware of this, the things we can do with this. And we can make ourselves better. We can tap into that energy. So how do we do that? I'm going to talk a little bit, unless somebody wants to jump in. Feel free to jump in if you want to talk about this, about what are the elements for achieving a magnetic personality, because ultimately that's what we're going to use this energy for. One of the principles is having a pleasing personality. And what does that mean? It's more than just being nice, right? There's a lot of things involved. There's a lot of self-work here. So one way to be a pleasing personality and to have that level of authority and a little bit of power and influence is to understand that we can use this energy to actually develop some personal magnetism. So how does that express itself? Good showmanship. Understand and apply the art of catering to the masses. You know anybody who can do good showmanship? My first thought was Tony Robbins, because he was on Blab not too long ago. And we flocked. We flocked there. And I can tell you that while I am a fan of Tony Robbins and some of his writings, I'm not enough of a fan to have read everything or to have all of his products. I have maybe 2, and that's it. But we're drawn to him. There are others like that, and it's because he understands and is able to apply that art of showmanship. And yet he's not putting on a dog and pony show, because it comes across as real and authentic. Christian, own your sexual energy instead of repress it. Exactly. And with women, we will suppress it. We will. Harmony within self. Be in control of your own mind. Here we've been talking up to this point all this time about how we can control our thoughts. And if we find ourselves focused on something that isn't helpful, redirect those thoughts, right? Humility is magnetic. Also initiative and being interested in the person you're talking to, being able to listen. You're hitting it right on the nose, Matt. Exactly. Definiteness of purpose. Be definite in developing relationships of harmony with others. How's that? This magnetic personality, which is a level above pleasing personality. What do you think of that? Be definite in developing relationships of harmony with others. And that goes along, I think, with what Matt is saying, is that initiative and being interested in the person you're talking to and being able to listen. Appropriateness of clothing. First impressions are lasting. Yes, we can overcome bad first impressions. Oh, but be honest with me. You know, how seriously would you take me if I had made sure that I was showing as much cleavage as possible, and I was purposefully directing your attention someplace? Really, would we be able to have a serious conversation? Male or female, because it's distracting for we females as well. Just so you know, it's just distracting. Posture and carriage of the body. Alertness and posture indicates alertness of the brain. So now you understand why standing tall and that the way you carry yourself has such an impact on others, that it's more than it's pleasing, but it's also attractive. Let's see here. Sincerity of purpose. Build confidence in others. Choice of language. You know, speak well. If you know how to, use it. Poise comes with self-confidence and self-control. How attractive are all of these characteristics to you? They're very attractive to me. You're still eating late, but thinking right now too. Self-control over the childish mind, high vibration of thought. You're getting it. And now wait a second. I don't think it's childish. I don't think it's childish. I think Christian has it. Own your energy. Own that sexual energy. Don't repress it. Acknowledge this is a part of who I am. You know? This is a part of who I am. And I can control it. But there's no reason to repress it. Okay. Self-control. Maybe you meant having self-control. I don't know. Did you? Is that what you meant? You know, you're welcome to come on in and discuss any of this with me. And it doesn't have to, you don't even have to say the word sex, just so you know. Because what we're talking about is magnetic personality. I'm talking about what is it? There's 21 elements he's got in here, and I'm just telling you a couple of them. Enthusiasm. You know that's essential in all forms of salesmanship. Enthusiasm sells. If you don't believe in the product you're selling, why should the buyer? If you don't believe in yourself when you're selling yourself and your personal services, why should the buyer? And that comes across, doesn't it? Let's see, tact. Okay, yeah, we all know what lack of tact is. That's when we have loose conversation, boldness of expression. Just go into a blab where someone's just being vulgar. You know, I dropped in on one this morning because I saw somebody that I would have enjoyed starting the day out, being a part of that blab. And then somebody in the room on the live stream just immediately went into throwing the F-bomb. The attitude was just embarrassing. And it's like, really? No, I'm going to leave here. For one, I didn't want to start my morning off like that. But also for a second, I don't stand blabs like that. Your lack of tact is disrespectful to me. So I just leave. Yeah, others may. You're fine doing your thing. I'm just telling you how I work, right? Facial expressions, it shows your moods and thoughts. And we've got 4 people on a blab all on their phones. 4 people on a blab all on their phones. I'm not sure what that means. And then we have it's not uncontrolled. We control it because we have self-control. Without self-control, we would be an animal. Yes. And that's an excellent direction to go, right? We do have that self-control, and most of us express it and put it to use. Napoleon Hill is challenging us to direct it on purpose and to recognize when we're able to.
I just had a friend who he runs a window cleaning business in Oregon, doing some web work for him, and I've known him since I was like 13, many years ago. And he said, well, I had an employee that didn't show up to work. The reason why is that he was put in jail for rape.
Good place for him to be.
Hands down, we do control it. Otherwise, more things like that would be happening.
Yes.
And it's not an excuse not to control it.
No, but lack of ability doesn't mean that you can't learn how.
I agree with that.
And as we've talked before, I know that I know the value of team sports for young boys as a way to direct that energy into something positive.
Yes.
But it's different for women. While we enjoy team competition and being athletic and being fit and physical, it is a part of the energy. Honestly, we really do revert inward when it's not expressed or fulfilled, whereas men tend to go outward with it, either to the extreme of what you're talking about or the anger and the frustration that's, and the way it's exhibited out in the world. You can go up to an athlete and watch them really, really focus that energy.
Especially when they lose. I said, especially when they lose.
Right. That's a way to visualize it. Absolutely. Christian is saying, I think creativity or being creative is one of the most effective ways to harness this energy for both sexes. Yes. And creativity in the form of using the imagination, of creating an atmosphere of innovation, being versatile. Let's see here. Like I said, there's all kinds of things here. Controlled sex energy is personal magnetism, major asset of every great leader and every great salesperson. And it is, isn't it? It's controlled. And there's the secret, like Brian is saying. We have the ability, and if you're teachable, you can learn it. You can also learn how to harness it and really focus it in a particular direction so that it's more helpful than
Yeah.
harmful. And that goes for both sides, both genders. You know, it. So, any other thoughts?
So anyway, yeah, that was. I don't know if I'm not sure that sexual energy conveys the correct message because it's more than that.
Yes, it is more than that, because Napoleon Hill even says that um, he points out that the desire for sex, love, and romance is inborn and natural, and that the sex desire is connected to spiritual urges.
And I agree with that.
And in today's world, applying, directing, and making sacred our sexual, romantic, passionate natures is a success strategy that enriches mind, body, and spirit, in addition to our paychecks, pocketbooks, and portfolios.
Well,
how's that for a mature look at it?
This goes back to the root of humanity. No matter where you come from, I mean, even if it's a biblical worldview or an atheist worldview, the very first thing we were charged to do in both instances was to go forth and multiply.
Right.
We've
Well,
got,
yeah, that's innate. That's part of who we are.
yes, we've got
Yes.
to reproduce something. Reproduction is part of human life. Whether it be children or whether it be in business.
Uh-huh.
So, this is, as you said, innate or
Right.
mental.
All right. So Hill asserts this. He asserts that men need to discover the willpower to not be controlled by their needs, which is what you were talking about, self-control, and what we've been talking about here, right? About the physical. For women, and again, it's almost the opposite. A woman needs to learn to care for herself and give her inner and outer self the attention she is yearning for. And the sex, love, and romantic energy is transmuted into a healthy, vital, physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially rich life. And and I'm going to repeat what Christian said: own it, recognize it.
Say those things again.
Oh, thanks.
Sorry, I couldn't.
No worries. No worries. So a woman, while a man needs to discover the willpower to not be controlled by the needs and to learn that self-control and self-discipline, a woman needs to learn to care for herself and give her inner and outer self the attention she is yearning for. The sex, love, and romance energy is transmuted into a healthy, vital, physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially rich life. Spiritual practice is the primary way for women to feel worthy and connected.
Do you want me to sum it up in one word?
Sure.
Security.
No. That's a woman's point of view. And I'm probably going to prove myself wrong any minute now. That's my immediate response. And I'll tell you why. Because I thought security associated with having somebody else take care of me, associated with, I went negative, didn't I? Associated with subjugating myself for it.
You don't want to be home.
I immediately went negative, didn't I? And that is wrong. All right, so let me come back around.
And you're in this dynamic of not the I'll say 40s, I may be wrong, where women got to vote and all this.
Right.
You're the dynamic on the other side of that fence. Women are still in society, I feel, trying to prove themselves. They don't like the word weaker sex. I never have. The feminists.
I think it depends on the group we're around.
But I think every one of those words, I'm not saying relying on somebody else for security.
Right. I realized that after I had already
What I am saying
jumped on you about it.
What I am saying is that it is an innate need for a woman to feel safe, that she has provision, not necessarily provided for, but she's not going to starve. Her and her children are not going to starve to death.
Right. Well, the whole point of this is, and that's why I will agree with you, security. It begins with a spiritual practice. And a woman who is developing a spiritually and financially rich life must do more than just engage in spiritual practice. She needs to get into financial action. Oftentimes what happens to we women, and it is across the board, and I can point out woman after woman after woman. All you have to do, honest to gosh truth, I'm not kidding, is go to a Facebook group full of women, and you will see women who don't like to talk about money, who don't understand money, who don't understand finances, who always fall back, and it's usually women who say, well, I don't do math. I don't do math.
I don't do math.
And, well, no, it's usually women. It's constant. It's constant. And I didn't realize how constant it was until I got involved in a few women's groups on Facebook, because they happen to be a target market for a service offering I have. And I'm watching them and I'm like, what the heck? And it's because we equate money with power and we don't feel we have the power to have it. It's that simple. So now we're going to come back to the security. There comes the loop for a woman. What will happen is she will begin to feel, because she doesn't feel secure, she will begin to be afraid, and she will be nervous and lack confidence and lack ability, and we'll put ourselves down. And I've done it. I've been there. I get it. So what I'm learning is that learning to be self-sufficient is the focus, is a good way to focus that energy. So instead, we'll internalize, I told you, right? We'll internalize the lack of physical expression and the need to physically express our sexual energy, instead of, as most men will do, is to express it outwardly. We internalize it, and it turns into all about self-beratement and lack of confidence. So what we are going to learn how to do, and I'm on a mission with Sharon to do this. Sharon's going to handle the financial part. My intention is to get people to think independently and think for yourself, so that you can become self-sufficient, so that you can become self-sustaining, so that you can honestly take care of yourself. And it goes back to that security that you had said. I can feel secure. I can feel secure financially, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and mentally. And that's because I can take these skills that I'm learning. I'm growing them in myself. I'm becoming better. And I'm utilizing that energy instead of inward to take myself down, focusing it on a spiritual plane that allows me to, I guess the best words would be better. I'm going to rely on you to flesh that out for me a little bit. Hey, Joanne, welcome.
I definitely like the word security to sum up every one of those words, but I would caveat that with security of self.
Security based on self.
Yep. It's not relying on. I mean, think about it. And this isn't wishing. I don't want to go there. But think about not having your husband around.
Right.
Would you be able to make it?
Yes.
Absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Yes, I was making it before he came along. Trust me, I did not marry the man for his money.
More than capable would be right after in the dictionary, Charlene. Because self-sufficient.
Right.
I just think that I think many times we jump like you just did with it relies upon a man, or it relies upon
somebody else.
Happy. That's not it.
Yeah.
I want to get remarried for one reason. I don't like being alone. I want to share this wonderful, miserable life.
I want to give I'm going to interrupt everybody because my friend April just came in the room, and you need to know this is one fantastic gal. It is so good to see you here, my dear. She recently had a birthday, and I would sing to her, except we're recording right now, so not a good idea. And nobody would come back to my program. So anyway, I had to do that, Brian, because I haven't seen her on here in a while. So anyway.
I am going to hop off.
Well, you don't have to. I know you have work to do, but I love what you're saying because it's so very, very true. And I backpedal and take everything. My initial reaction, it was not a proper response. It was a reaction, totally based on all that's happened up until today, right? And my experience of what I've associated that word security with. And I think you're correct. Security based on self. And that's where we women can turn that repressed energy, that inward beratement, because that's what it is. It's just sexual energy turning inward. We can take that and instead focus it again on spiritual, financial, emotional health, physical health. Let's turn it around and acknowledge it. Because I'm going to go back to what Christian said. Own it. It's a part of who I am. It is not being expressed right now, and there's no fulfillment at the moment, but that energy is there. So let's put it to use. Put it to use being focused on growing the business. Put it to use to improving myself. Put it to use in my spiritual affairs so that I can be better and grow. Christian, good morning.
Hey,
so good to see you.
Good to see you too. I like this topic.
Now I've got two attractive men, and I'm going to sit up straight. You know that's the truth. Couldn't resist. That was an excellent statement you had earlier. Own it.
Yeah.
I like that too.
You're flipping in and out, Christian.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm trying to use am I back?
Yes.
Okay. I'm using Google because Firefox won't work anymore. Yeah, I like this topic because I think it really gets into my area of expertise, so to speak, or area of I like to study.
Yeah.
Because what he's actually saying is you have to kind of raise the what should I say, the expression, the level of expression to a more metaphysical or spiritual realm for it to get its satisfaction if you're not going to be doing it physically.
Right.
And that's why I think he's talking about, that's why I use creativity, because I think being creative is one of the more pragmatic ways, so to speak, of expressing a spiritual energy, and that's what sex actually is for creation, right? It's one of the most energetic, pleasurable.
We just lost him.
Experiences that we have as humans. Working.
Okay, you're back now.
Okay, I don't know what's going on.
Sorry,
but I was saying we're moving in harmony with the creative.
Right. So you're going back to what Brian first started out with. Is that's what we're made for? Is to go forth and procreate, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all about creation. So it's the same energy where we can create through the mental energies.
Yeah, it's it's creation of when you're talking about creative art or a program or whatever it may be, but I also like I mentioned earlier about the what do you call it, not repressing it, and so it does to me require a bit of you call it control. I call it it's like harnessing it,
right.
Harnessing
reining it in
to basically to be expressed on a higher level, so to speak, and that does involve mixing it or combining it with the other factors, focus, concentration, And so when you're able to move it into these areas, which feel these great leaders are able to do, you're able to harness it more effectively for the completion of whatever project you're working on. Like you were talking about the handshake or meeting people. Like I know very people, you can feel the sexual energy around them, but they're not being lewd or they're not, expressing it outwardly in that way.
It's the intention,
but you can tell that they're
the intention is what you're talking about. Well, I'm not feeling like, well, you're putting this on in order to conquer or to possibly get, conquest or anything like that. But instead, I'm drawn to it simply because it is an energy that's attractive and magnetic, right? Okay. So now a question is,
and
how do we
creativity is attractive because that's like, well, I think it's twofold. First of all, it's part of growing up. So when you're younger, it's much harder to do. And I think for good reason. I think when we're younger, one of our main focuses, just in a natural state of being, is to procreate. Like when we're going through puberty and we're in our early 20s, it's kind of like, it's hard to think about anything else, when we're in the presence of someone attractive, right? But I think it's up to us, more mature people and even more mature, to help people learn how to focus it, learn how to channel it into effective ways. And I think how you do that is acknowledge it, first of all, and recognize that it is part of you. It's part of your energy. There's nothing wrong with it. Right. And then use it to, like one of the things I like to do is connect two things that people may think are separate. So in other words, connect it to what you're trying to accomplish. See how the two work together. In other words, when you're talking to a young man or a young woman, a young man say, okay, well, what kind of, or you want a woman or you want a family. Okay, so what does the kind of woman you want admire in a man, Someone who's focused, someone who has discipline, someone who has it and harness it.
Are you plugged in, Christian?
Like I say, I'm using Google, and I'm trying to download and install Firefox, so I can't do both at the same time because I don't know why.
Why are you doing both of them?
I don't know what's happening with my internet, whether the service went lower or...
Well, it takes a lot of bandwidth, remember, to be on Blab.
Yeah, so I stopped downloading the Firefox because I had to go to an older version or try to find an older version. Because the newer one...
Well, it's not working. Whatever you're doing, it's not working. We are missing out on so much quality stuff, Christian. What I'm hearing is that when we're young, we have all that frenetic extra energy, and we can learn how to direct it so that our imaginations and our creativity and our discipline, our self-control, right? But how to harness that so that it's beneficial to us and to others, not harmful. Thank you.
All right, let's see if I can get this out. Can you guys hear me?
I can kind of hear you. What about you, Brian?
It's breaking up. I hear about every fifth sentence, maybe.
Yeah, see, I tell you to refresh. Close your other tabs and just refresh.
I find it interesting that through this whole discussion, self-control is primarily within this. I also like doing SEO work. Some of the last words that you mentioned are the most important.
Okay.
If you look at what's listed as the biblical fruits of the Spirit, self-control is the very last one.
Oh. Okay.
So you wonder in that whole conversation, if he didn't, love is the first, but I'll use the word caveat. He throws the caveat at the end of the sentence, which sometimes is the most important, of self-control.
Right.
And
if you don't have it, you can learn it. It's
and
often done through
like my friend's employee.
Mm-hmm. Well, and yeah, we could give in and resort to being animals, or learn from whomever the adult was that helped us to learn how to behave, how to control ourselves, how to direct that energy. And then the recognition for those women out there in the world, Think and Grow Rich for Women. I swear to gosh, I love this section because it addresses and she articulates how that level of energy is different for a woman than it is for a man. The Napoleon Hill version is spot on for describing men and what you go through and how to direct that energy. And he asserts that men need to discover the willpower, self-control, to not be controlled by your needs. Whereas we women, it's very different. We need to learn how to care for ourselves and give our inner and outer self the attention we are yearning for. And honestly, it's a spiritual practice. It begins with a spiritual practice, and then delving into the financial, and then learning about the finances, because it goes back to what you had said earlier about security and having security based on me, not on anybody else. So it's very different. I'm so glad I got this book. I'm telling you, I struggled with this the first couple of times we read through Napoleon Hill's version. It's like trying to articulate it. Good morning. Good to see you, Nathan.
Likewise.
How are you?
Fine. I couldn't resist putting that comment in the sidebar because I knew when you read it, you would laugh.
Greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated.
Very good.
Yes. To answer Lola's question, who's just not transformation, my dear. Not transformation. It is transmutation. And it means transferring your sexual energy from sexual expression into expressions of different sorts, like increasing the imagination, courage, keenness of thought.
Creativity.
That's what we're talking about. And we delved into how a male or a man's sexual energy is very different than a woman's sexual energy when they're not expressed. And that's always been a stumbling block for women when reading Think and Grow Rich, because we don't act that way. It was not describing us in that chapter.
Well, also you got to remember the time frame that this was written on. Either the women's right to vote. What do they call that? What's the one?
Suffragette.
Universal suffrage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't think of it. But it was in that time frame where Napoleon Hill wrote this. So we lived in a male-centric society.
Right. And it's perfectly okay that it's written that way, because we now have something that articulates the woman's side. So that's perfectly okay with me. I'm just glad I've got Sharon Lecter to articulate it better than I can.
Yeah.
So what do you think of all this, Nathan?
Just taking it in. Every time we talk, I have a wee bit of news, and just ever since I had what seemed like a major disaster about 7 weeks ago. And after that, really started looking at different things and really upping my game. And as a result of what I'm doing, I now have some major fans, 2 of them, both from Australia. And one of them told me about something I needed to do about 10 days ago to up my game. And then yesterday, one of them said, no, you need to go further. And then he said to me, what you need to do is you need to put together a media kit, and you need to get on to, he said to me, you need to find the top 5 talk shows, and then you need to put together a media kit for these shows. And he said, you need to up your game. This is what I'm dealing with, right?
Poor Nathan. I mean, it just started out as this little comment made by somebody, and now it's blowing up. It's awesome.
Well, it wasn't a little comment. It was the result of that major financial mistake.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
And that propelled me into a particular direction. Plus, I've been going through a tremendous spiritual transformation. You talk about that kind of thing. And from my perspective, I'm going to say something rather radical that most people don't know. All suffering is caused by thinking. And if people can learn to stop thinking, even for brief periods of time, all mental suffering ends. You can learn how to think in a different way as well, which will reduce suffering. But ultimately, it is the process of thinking, especially dysfunctional thinking, that causes all suffering. And this is something that most people don't know. And after last night, I mean, my talk with Hamish, I was thinking about, what's my perspective on some things. The bit about suffering comes from a spiritual perspective. My understanding comes from modeling Eckhart Tolle. And 1 year ago, I had a major change in my life where I went from living in the thinking world most of the time to my thought process dropping by 80 to 90%. And then suddenly living in a place of silence most of the time. But then also having things that wouldn't allow me to stay there, and then having to go through various examinations of my psychology so that I could release those, which would allow me to then go back to those places of stillness. So when we talk about discipline, one of the major problems for many people is not necessarily the discipline or affirmations, but baggage, emotional, mental, psychological baggage, which is actually getting in their way in the form of unexamined beliefs, things that they've stuffed in the closet, that bucket full of that really wormy, slimy, smelly stuff that we stick our hand in, we go, ugh, that kind of stuff that many people have to one degree or another, which if they really want to have the success and the joy of life, they need to face that and they need to look at it. And one of the major problems is that so many people, when they encounter that, they run like striped apes. They just take, sorry, I picked that up from a book, but they run away.
That was an interesting visual. Thank you, Nathan. Remember, this is Morning Mindset. I'd like to have my mind on something that propels me forward.
Well, I do like the mental picture of that, though.
It was interesting, wasn't it? It was break my stay quickly there, buddy.
Well, it's a good pattern interrupt, if nothing else. But the point is that a lot of people want all these things in their lives, and they launch forward in this direction, but they don't examine where they've come from, right, and realize that much of that needs to be dealt with. Because if they don't deal with it, see, from my perspective, the fastest way to get a lot of this stuff resolved is through NLP. You can choose traditional methods, but I know from my own experience that most of them don't work very well. And there are three major tool sets that I use: NLP, the work of Byron Katie, and positive psychology. And beyond that, the works of Eckhart Tolle, Adyashanti, other spiritual teachers. But those are the tools in my toolkit. And after living as long as I have, I know it works. I know it doesn't. And I don't waste my time in places that don't work. Right. It's like, I'm a very practical dude. It's like, oh, if I need to move that nut, oh, I need a wrench. Oh, I want to do something with the nail. Oh, I need a hammer. And just grab the appropriate tool and use it. And then when I'm done, I move on. And so what I'm about is saying to people, look, the reason that you're in emotional pain is because you're thinking in a particular way that's causing that. And so here are some tools to help you undo that stuff. And then beyond that, learning disciplines so that you don't fall into these old traps.
So those disciplines can also be used for, and actually what you're describing is using those disciplines to control your thoughts so that you have an ability to harness that which you want to harness. So
Yeah.
it might be a spiritual energy or an experience that you had that can propel you forward. It might be the harnessing. In today's discussion, we're talking about the harnessing of the sex energy, being able to acknowledge, own it, reflect on it, see that there's awful ugly baggage attached
Yes.
to the word sex, awful ugly baggage attached to the pain we might put ourselves through when we're thinking about just that energy. And women will tend to repress it, whereas men tend to express it. And so we as women, when we repress it, you're talking about these tools that can enable me to look at it, be honest about it, own it, and then be able to harness that energy, because we're not getting rid of the energy. But as Christian had said earlier, own it and be able to harness it so that our imagination can go on fire, so that we have that physical energy to do what needs to be done today, so that we can get more spiritual, which is what women usually start with, is let's start on the spirit and get into self-care and fulfillment that way. Yeah, good stuff. Welcome back, Christian. Did you get yourself fixed?
I hope. We'll see.
Okay.
That has a negative connotation, Charlene.
Oh, dear. Sorry. I meant his internet. Sorry. Oh, dear.
It's just the way you said it, and the connotation was just hilarious. It's like, okay.
I didn't get it until you said something, Nathan. Then I had all kinds of thoughts that I could not express verbally.
There it went.
It's partly, well, I mean, Charlene and myself, we have this little thing that's happened, but more than that, it's just the way that she said it, and my mind went sideways, as it often does, and there you go.
Well,
there
this
you
is
go.
great.
So let's bring it back. Let's bring it back.
But it
All
goes
right,
to what we're
Christian.
talking about, right? And like you were saying, and I think slowly we're starting to get over it as society, and especially younger people are, because it's not that our brains went in a bad direction, I don't think. I just think they're just in a so-called taboo where we can't talk about it, as, in polite company, as they speak, as they say, right? But I think it's a part of us. And when you're talking about harnessing, let's see if I can express the same idea I was trying to earlier. And I think the guy left, you was talking about why are you spiritualizing something that's biological, whatever. And I think everything is spiritual to a degree. And I don't think spiritual is a bad word, meaning it's because it's kind of like the idea of magic. All magic is to people is a science you don't understand yet, right? And I'm not going to get into the sciences I usually do. I probably will anyway, but because science is starting to understand some of this so-called magic of spirituality and religion and all this other stuff through quantum physics and all that. But like I said, I'm not going to go there. But I am going to go towards harnessing it, which is what I feel is so good about our mental capacity and building our mental capacity and our will. That's why my name is C Will. But and yes, everything is spiritual because everything is energy. And we're talking about transmuting energy. So because everything is energy, right? I guess I can't do without going scientific. So everything is energy, from the particles in the atom to ourself, everything is energy. And what you're talking about is actually transmuting a very powerful, life-giving energy that basically everything runs off, everything, our bodies run off this energy, plants, life, everything is growing because of this energy of creation and reproduction. And so what you're able to do is to raise the energy into the level of creativity and to the level of, creating other things besides babies, you know what I'm saying? But you can create babies too. But the point is that, you should, and generally in our society, you should only create babies with one woman, right? And and not all of them at the same time, right? And so if you're a man and you're married, or and you want to still express this energy, you can attach it towards an idea, a project, and women appreciate that. In my experience, when I work with women, and you're able to control your sexual energy and say, hey, we're creating something together, and we can use our sexual energy and put it into this project, you know, because you got a man, I got a girlfriend, whatever. This is what we're going to use our energy for.
And a different way to put that so that people who aren't quite getting what you're saying can understand, tell me if I'm wrong, is that I'm inspired by the fella that I'm with. You know, there's a magnetic personality. He's got authority. This is from a woman's side. He's got power. He's got that magnetism, if you will. He's got that just that positive energy. And it's not mentally thinking, well, I'm married, so I can't have you. That's not what goes through the mind. It is the because I've worked in teams of men for many, many years as an engineer. And so I would be on that team, and I can recall that when one or two would walk in, I was focused. We could play off of each other. We could troubleshoot better with one. I could troubleshoot better with these two than I could with the others. And that's all it is. That's all it is. I mean, if either one of us had said anything untoward or anything related to physical, we would have poo-pooed it and said you're ridiculous.
Well, to use Nathan's words, it's
but
like
now
you're
it's
breaking
just
state.
looking
Breaking
but now it's just looking at it as, oh, in this context, that's what that looks like.
Exactly.
That's what that energy looks like.
I think too many times we take that word sex and just immediately think of intercourse.
Right. And that's part of why I'm even willing to have this kind of discussion on Blab, is so that we can move it from there. Because you're right. Those of us in Americans are so used to that. And so.
And we even deny it, I think. We even displace it.
We're a weird lot. I can tell you that. All you have to do is look at what's coming up on the movies, what's coming up on television, and then drop in on a relationship and say, we are just messed up. Which is why we read books like Think and Grow Rich. Which is why we have discussions like this, is so that we can learn to think for ourselves, so that we can recognize and learn there's more than what I'm thinking right now. There's more. And what is that more? And can I decipher what's being said? And can I discern that which is appropriate for me right now? Which, in my case, it's, I don't get it. So if I don't get it, I'm just going to sit quietly, recognizing that I am teachable and that at another time I might get it. So instead, just quietly say, you know, I don't have to understand it all right now.
Well, things often come in stages.
Oh, yeah. And then I'm struck brilliant. You just need to know that happens sometimes.
Oh, you're struck brilliant.
I get struck brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, I know. I could say something about this. I'm going to keep my trap shut.
Thank you. All right. So we're at the top of the hour, and I am going to close down the recording, and then we can keep the room open. So I want to thank everybody who's joined me in the live stream here, Brian and Christian and Nathan. Thank you those in the comment section for adding to the discussion. It's been good. It's been very good. Those watching the replay and those watching from the outside, thank you for joining us. This is Charlene Burke with Grow Because You Know. That's www.growbecauseyouknow.com. Let's move forward with the day on purpose, with purpose, to grow our hearts, grow our minds, and grow our businesses. Until next time, have a great day.